It's the weekend and you have financial questions that need answering. That can only mean one thing. It's time for Jill on Money, the show that takes the mystery out of your finances. Here's your host, Jill Schlesinger.
Welcome. It's the Jill on Money show, and we are delighted that you are joining us. Here's what we're trying to do. We are trying to take the mystery out of your financial life. And it's tough because there's so much going on right now, and it can be very confusing, and maybe you feel like you have everything down, but you need some help. Whatever your situation, we want to try to help you out. Mark and I, we're both certified financial planners. We are desperate to try to get as many of you on the road to financial stability and well-being. We really are. This is what we do. We love it. And that's one of the reasons we're so glad that we are sponsored for the entire year this year by Facet Wealth, facetwealth.com. This is an organization that is trying to bring financial planning to everyone, basically for a flat fee. They are providing conflict-free planning because they are all fiduciaries. They're certified financial planners. And if you work with Facet Wealth, you will find that you will get a dedicated advisor, not just some random person in a call center. And there are no wealth or account minimums. Kind of love that. So check them out, facetwealth.com. Okay, so if you have a financial question, gosh, we'd love to hear from you. Our email address is askjill@jillonmoney.com. askjill@jillonmoney.com. And just tell us what's going on. And don't forget, we are trying to bring more of you on the air with us. So if you'd like to come on the air, just say you want to come on the air, and Mark will do the rest. Diane writes, and she says, I'm new to the show. I listened to your March 25th episode. So this is the podcast, not this radio show. And Diane writes that I am a recent widow. Oh my gosh, she lost her husband to COVID. Oh God. It's a terrible time. Really is. All right. Diane goes on to write, I made the decision to sell our home as is and purchase a home that's more within my financial budget. My thought was to buy a townhouse, stay for about 5 years, and make a decision if I wanted to stay in the city I'm in or maybe move. If I decide to move, I was thinking I could use the property as my first rental for passive income once it is paid off. Now, some people have voiced their opinion that I should just rent even if the monthly rent is approximately the same as a monthly mortgage. What are your thoughts? My first thought is I'm very sorry about your loss. It's terrible. My next thought is, when you're in a time of transition, I often like the idea of having flexibility. And when you talk about buying a townhouse and staying for 5 years, all these things sound interesting, but I don't know if you're going to know exactly what your circumstances are going to be. And maybe making a decision like this right this minute doesn't make the most sense. You didn't give us a lot of details about what's going on in your life. For example, how old you are, how much money you have, and how you're currently supporting yourself. Maybe it's through, maybe you're still working, or are you retired? I don't know. So I really would like more details in that respect. I can't help but think that biting off a move right now and a purchase, it doesn't feel right to me. And I know that if the monthly rent is the same as the mortgage, maybe pushing you towards a mortgage, but I don't know. I'm thinking the flexibility of renting at least for a year, that's what seems much more appealing to me. Now, you also said you're interested in this idea of creating passive income. Again, I want to know more about you. I want to know what your other assets are. I want to know whether you've ever done this before. Have you ever been an owner, a landlord, landlady? Maybe that might also help me. I think we've heard from a lot of people who who often will make some of these decisions and are somewhat regretful for the decisions they make again, amid a transition. So I hope that helps. You can follow up and send us more information. Okay. Kim says, hello, Jill and Mark. Kudos to the team for all the information you provide on your podcasts over the past year. Very much appreciated. Hey, guys, by the way, if you don't subscribe to our podcast, you should. It's called Jill on Money. Just go to our website to jillonmoney.com and we will provide the links right there on the front door to subscribe to the podcast. Okay. Now, Kim goes on to write, I'm wondering if it would be wise to invest in stock and bond index funds. That's a layup for me, but here we go. I'm 53, married, empty nest, financially secure, no mortgage, no loans, 12-month emergency fund in place. Each of the following has one Roth account in the portfolio mix. $600,000 with Edward Jones, $300,000 with Fidelity, $100,000 in a 401k with Vanguard, where I do have a third of the portfolio in index funds, and I pick those funds myself. I would like to retire at 65. I know Edward Jones is pretty much active funds, but I've been with them since 2004. My advisor's good to work with. Now I'm wondering if I should roll over some of the Edward Jones money to a Vanguard or Fidelity stock or bond index fund. Your thoughts? Thanks for your time and reading this, and thanks in advance for your advice. Okay. I am not going to throw the Edward Jones people under the bus. Okay? And I hear that you like this person. Just because you've been with someone since for a long time, it does at least give us a reason to start to say, well, what else is this person doing for you? Right? Is this advisor at Edward Jones, besides being good to work with, is this person doing more than just managing money? Is the advisor giving you advice? Is the advisor a certified financial planner, done some financial planning for you, helped you with your ideas around retirement and the plans you have for reaching your retirement goals, but also the plans after you retire? Those are questions I'd be interested in. And then, if the advisor is really doing that part of it, the actual advising, yeah, you know what? Maybe you can stick around there. However, if the Edward Jones person is simply managing assets, then you got to move the money because you're just giving your money away. There's no reason to stay there because, again, gang, you don't need to pay anyone any fees for managing money. That is not where the value comes with these types of services. The value comes in the real financial planning work and advice that they give. If you're not getting that, Kim, then I say move that money to index funds and don't look back. Okay? All right. You are listening to Jill on Money. It's Easter weekend, so I hope that if you are celebrating, you have a good celebration, and you're going on various Easter egg hunts. Oh, Mark, should we do is there a little Easter egg hunt in your future with the boy or not? Yeah, Mark's not feeling the love for an Easter egg hunt, maybe because it's a little chilly still here in New York, but okay, it's Jill on Money. When we return, we're going to get some of your voices on the air. It's very exciting. We're going to do some calls. So stay tuned. Jill on Money. We'll be right back.
.401ks, IRAs, refinancing, she covers it all. Back to Jill on Money with Jill Schlesinger.
You're back. It's Jill on Money. And as promised, we are starting to bring more of your voices on the air with us. If you'd like to ask us a question, sort of in person, kind of, sort of, just send us a note. Ask Jill at jillonmoney.com. That's what Corey did. And Corey's on the line from San Diego. Hi, Corey. How can we help you out?
Sure. So I am 26. I'm working from home for a major company and maxing out 401k, Roth IRA, HSA, and have some invested funds at Wealthfront that I'm trying to decide what to do with. I've decided to pursue real estate. So I'm actually working on an offer on a property right now, but have a couple questions around how and when to take that money out for this property and future properties.
Okay. How much money's in the Roth right now?
Well, so the 401k is Roth and the IRA is Roth.
Yep. So how much is in both? Let's say total invested in the Roth construct.
About 160.
Great. How much do you earn?
About 110.
Great. And when you say you're about to buy, are you going to buy to live in it or buy it as a rental property?
Solely as a rental property. I don't have interest in buying in California, and I'm not leaving here anytime soon.
Okay. How much money's in the Wealthfront account?
About 140.
And is the Wealthfront account essentially also your emergency reserve, or do you have a separate checking account for that?
Separate savings account at Capital One, about 25 in there.
Okay. That would get you through 6 months-ish if something bad happened?
That would be about 8 to 10 months, yeah.
Perfect. Any debt, school debt left over, anything like that?
No school debt. No other liabilities. The only other assets to be aware of are have a separate brokerage account at Vanguard that has about $15,000 in there, and then the HSA has about $16,000 invested.
That's great. Okay. Now, in the Wealthfront account, how is that invested? Is it sort of some sort of age-based aggressive model that they have you in with that 140?
Yeah, I set the risk score, and it's at 9.5 out of 10 right now. So
that sounds risky.
Yeah, it's very risky. It's 95%. It's all stocks, all low-cost ETFs, mostly Vanguard.
Okay, now tell me about the rental property that you will be purchasing. How much are you going to spend on that?
It's in Arkansas. The offer was accepted for $210. I'm exploring what the best ROI is between 20% down and 25% down and how points play into that. Mm-hmm. So it'll be somewhere between, call it 45 to 60 down payment.
Okay. And some of you who are listening might think that's weird, but when it's rental property, what the lenders are going to do is they're going to say, we want to make it a little bit harder. If you put a little bit more money down, then we'll give you a better rate. And if you want to leverage it a little bit more, the rate won't be as good, but you don't have to tie up as much of your money. And why Arkansas? You have to, who's there?
I worked there for a year right out of college, so I'm familiar with the area. It's growing quickly. So I have contacts there, and it seems like a good place to go for my first place.
Okay. And it's going to be a pretty cheap mortgage. So let's presume you put 60 down, you get a $150,000 mortgage. Again, it may be less. When I'm looking at rental property, I really just want to look at it as, how do I leverage it, right? How do I borrow enough money to make this, really juice this up? And you're familiar with the area. And does that mean because it's a remote location, you're going to hire someone to manage the property on your behalf?
Yep. So I have the manager set up, and I have factored that into the cost evaluation.
And so what I think you ought to do is immediately, do you have to fix this up at all? I mean, is there going to be some money that's going to be necessary, not just from a down payment? You're going to have some closing costs, but is there any money you need to allocate to painting it or whatever?
Yeah, maybe $1,000 cosmetics, but structurally, it's pretty good. We're going to have the inspection next week, but I do not expect any concerns.
Okay, so here's what I would do. First of all, I might have a separate bank account where I just have this rental property, just so you have a little pot of money that's really earmarked for the rental property. The money that's in Wealthfront, I presume that a lot of that money or the Vanguard money you're going to have to pay some capital gains on that, right? I mean, you got $155,000. I would, between the two accounts, I would probably start freeing up 50, 60 grand pretty quickly, because now you're going to be closing. So now you're going to have to free up the money. Is there any reason why you should have a Wealthfront and a Vanguard account? Should we close that Vanguard account out at this point?
That's a great question. The only reason I have the Vanguard account is because I have stock that was gifted to me that I don't want to sell. And other than that, there's nothing. The rest is in cash. It was previously in stocks that I sold because I wasn't comfortable with it. So outside of that one stock that is held at Vanguard, I don't have any need to invest in individual things.
What a pain in the neck, though. What's the stock?
Texas Instruments.
Must be someone worked there. Huh?
Yeah, bar mitzvah stock.
So you're going to have to. So look, you can go into the Wealthfront. You got the cash in the Vanguard. Interestingly, obviously, there's two choices. You could blow out of the Wealthfront account and move everything into Vanguard, but then you're going to have to pay the tax on it. So that's a pain in the neck. So
I like Wealthfront, so I don't feel the need.
Good. Perfect. So Sell what you're going to need for this property. There should be an operating account for the property just in case it's vacant or something happens. And, you can put it all in your savings account, or you can make a separate account. You can make up a, sort of a dummy account that is with your current bank, or, really make it easy. And maybe you would have, that would be a way that you could have, the money being very much separate or siloed from your other money, so that you can really start tracking how well you're doing on this property, right? I would do that. It sucks to pay taxes, but, it's great to make money. So,
Yeah.
Hopefully you will, make it the long-term capital gains, not short-term. There's nothing that's a loser in there, is there?
There's one smaller fund, but for the most part, it's all gains. But I do have a question on that, on the liquidation of wealth fund and Vanguard. I understand the need to pay taxes. That doesn't concern me. I've accepted that.
Mm-hmm.
There's a small chance that this doesn't close right for whatever reason after the inspection or whatever. And if we close in a month, I'll have to bring the funds then. I know you don't like timing the market. What is your suggestion on, for example, selling 60 grand today versus selling 60 grand in a month?
I guess it could fall through, which is a drag. Maybe what I would do is, so you have an accepted offer. Let's wait till the inspection. That's usually when the deal falls apart. Okay. So once you have the engineer's inspection, then you do it. Look, don't skimp on things like insurance and the things that you're going to have that normally might seem like expensive and annoying. Just, you are now a landlord. And people sue landlords for things that happen. So just double check that your property and casualty insurance is up to date, that you have a good policy, that, everything is tidy. And then after the inspection, that's when I would pull the trigger.
Got it. 2 more questions on this
Go
guy.
for it.
Number 1, on the 20% down versus 25% down. If I put 25% down long term, I'm paying less, obviously, because of less interest, and it's going to help me cash flow more because of the lower mortgage payment. But the 20% down will have the better ROI. So
yeah, 20%.
20%. Okay.
Yep.
Even though the rates may be non-cash flowing, cash flow inhibitive.
I mean, shouldn't be that big a difference of 20 to 25% down.
In some rates, I've seen up to a half a point.
What?
I know, 3.5 versus 3.
If it's a half a point, then probably the 25 works. And, you don't ever make extra payments on these mortgages. Look, I'm still going to lean towards 20 down because it's rental property and your rents will rise, but your fixed costs will remain fixed for 30 years. So I still think 20 probably works. Maybe at a half a point, I would do the 25 down. It's not going to make a huge difference to you because you have the money. Essentially, even if you were breaking even cash flow wise, right? Real cash flow, you still are going to look good and show maybe a little loss on your taxes. And that's worth it for you. You're a young guy. You're going to keep making more money. So I'm going to lean towards 20 unless that this is really a half point. Unless if you can find something that's a little bit narrower, I don't know, 3/8, something like that, maybe I'd lean towards the 20.
Sounds good. Thank you, guys.
Okay, we'll get back to more of your questions live-ish in just a moment. If you would like to ask us that question, just send us an email, askjill@jillonmoney.com, or if you're on our website, because maybe you're signing up for our free weekly newsletter, the jillonmoney.com website, just click on the contact button. We'll be right back.
Welcome back to Jill on Money, where Jill Schlesinger takes the mystery out of your finances.
You're back. It's Jill on Money. And we would like to tell you that this here show, the Jill on Money program, is presented by LifeLock. LifeLock, let us help protect your identity. You know what, Mark? I just had a funny experience, which is, remember way back in the whole Equifax thing, I had frozen our credit records, all of them, 4 different agencies. And we were just like opening up a new joint account because HSBC is closing branches like crazy. And so, my significant other decided, okay, forget it. I'll finally give. I'll go to that other bank where you do your business. So, okay, I go to open up the accounts. No big deal. Yes, big deal. You can't open a bank account if your credit's frozen. So then I had to go and, oh God, like go through the whole thing. Like, where did I put the record? What's the number for the confirmation? How did I freeze the account? Anyway, it was way easier than I thought to unfreeze. So that's the good news. The bad news is that you still had to go through the process. Wasn't so bad actually. So I did. I just did a temporary lifting of the freeze for 5 days, and that was it. And so all done. Now it will be frozen once again, so those thieves won't get at me. Okay. If you want to come on the air with us, send us an email. Ask Jill at jillonmoney.com. Ask your question and then say, I want to come on the air with you. That's what Tim did. He is on the line from Texas. Hello, Tim. What can we do for you?
Well, I've got a couple questions. One is primarily what to do with, we've got about $30,000 we're trying to figure out how to deploy. We've got some, I guess you'd say, some kind of bad debt hanging around, some auto loans. There's some student loans thinking about paying down, but those are on the 0% suspension or whatever you'd call it. Also have another student loan that's on track for public service loan forgiveness.
Oh, that's good.
Yes. It's a really high balance and it's on an income-based repayment plan. So I was kind of using, those income-based payments as like a Roth versus traditional tiebreaker, I guess. So I've been going all traditional the past year or so, with kind of that added bonus, I guess you would say, of having the income-based repayment each month being lowered by 10%.
So let's just go back for 1 second. You're married because you said or you're partnered or something. So you've got a spouse of some sort. How old are you guys?
I'm 36 and she's 37.
Okay. And how much do you earn together?
I earn 120 and she earns 121.
Oh, nice for her. She squeaked out the winner there, huh?
Correct.
Just beat you. Good. Let's talk a little bit about what you're doing in terms of retirement planning. How are you using that $240,000 a year of income towards retirement?
Okay, so for the last, I guess 8 or 9 months or so, I'm on track to max it out for the coming year. So 19,500. Just started a new job about a month ago, and it's a new company, and they'll have 401k available in like July or August. She's not currently saving anything, but she will be, in a few months here, planning to max it out as well.
Children?
Yes, 6 and 4.5.
Tell me about this bad debt. How much money do you have outstanding on the auto loan?
So there's one that's about like $4,000 at, I want to say like 1.8% or something. And then there's $40,000 that's at like 2.75%.
The student loan, so the public loan forgiveness loan, that's how much that's outstanding?
So it's a lot. It's like $220,000 or something. Yeah.
Dude, what did you do? Like get a medical degree and not use it? Like how'd you accumulate all that debt?
So it was a dual degree program, law degree and a master's degree.
Oh, I'm sure that came in really handy, that extra master's. Are you kidding me? Come on.
Yeah.
Do you regret it? Tell me the truth right now.
I think if I could have gone back, I would have thought about it a little bit more carefully from a financial perspective.
Oh, you're so careful with your words also. Very good. I'm not like that. I'd be like, no way, I would never do that. Okay. The other student loan debt that is in forbearance right now that you actually will have to pay back, how much is that outstanding?
So that one's my wife's. I want to say it's like $28,000 or $29,000. And I think it's at the, like the 6.5% or something like that.
All right. So that's going to have to be paid back. Tell me about how much money you have already saved in terms of retirement and kind of what how you look at going forward your ability to put money into these plans? You say that your wife's going to put money in, but do you think you're both going to be able to max out at 19.5 eventually, with a full year of work?
Yeah, I believe so. Like I said, I'm maxing it out traditional. The balances right now is like 26,000 traditional and 23,000 Roth. It's only been a couple years that, I've been earning enough to save. I work for the state, so 10% of my salary goes toward a pension. I'm saving about $12,000 a year, paying into the pension, and then, the 19.5.
Sure. That's great, though. I mean, that's really helpful, right? I mean, if we're going to run your retirement numbers, obviously it looks a lot better when there's a nice big pension that could be potentially coming. So that's good. And is she in the private sector, or does she have a pension?
No, she's in the private sector, and she's saved, I think it's about like $55,000 altogether. Her 401k is kind of, roughly half and half, traditional and Roth.
So I think you're like on track. We have to get rid of some of this debt. How did the $30,000 of cash come about?
Via a settlement, actually, a couple months back.
Is it taxable? I mean, are you going to owe some money next tax year, when we have to look at this, or is it not taxable?
It was already taxed.
Okay. So, and you have an emergency reserve fund that has 6 to 12 months of your living expenses?
So probably more like 5 or 6 months. It's about $30,000 or $32,000. Yeah, that's covering about 5 or 6 months.
Okay, we're going to get back to Tim's question. We have the rest of the response in just a moment. If you would like to join us, just send us that email, askjill@jillonmoney.com, askjill@jillonmoney.com, and we will be right back.
Follow Jill on Twitter and Instagram for more personal finance content. Just use the handle @JillOnMoney. Now, back to the show.
You're back. It's Jill on Money, and let's get right back into our response to Tim from Texas. This is like one of the easier questions. Thank you for giving me a softball to start my morning. I appreciate that. I'm really hopeful that you're staying on top of the public loan forgiveness loan. Before we went on the air, I said, it's much more likely that this will actually turn into something that is forgiven under this administration. I had to say I was very nervous under the Betsy DeVos administration that those folks who had the public school loan forgiveness program, that they might get dinged. I was pretty scary. So, but you got to stay on top of that. Here's the thing. Ideally, we would essentially pay down the student loan debt for your wife at 6.5% first, but it's in forbearance. We've got some time. I have a couple of thoughts for you. One is that, you could take this 30 grand and do something, like basically knock down the $40,000 auto loan at 2.75%. And you could say, you know what? We're not earning that kind of money on a cash account. And why should we actually wait around, till we hopefully can pay that down on one lump sum? Let's just get rid of the bulk of it right now. And then you guys can, essentially probably get rid of both of these auto loans, I imagine, in the next, 6 to 12 months. So that's one boring way to think about it. Another way to think about it is, you know what? For right now, wife has a new job. Don't really know if she's going to love it or not. Want to keep some extra money that is, floating around in the emergency reserve fund just in case. And then maybe we will wait to have this $30,000 and just pay down her outstanding student loan debt. When's forbearance through? Is it through the whole year, or is it through September?
I think it's through September. And, one thing I forgot to mention earlier is that, there's talk of, everyone having $10,000 forgiven.
Yes.
If it makes sense to not pay it all down?
Yeah, so that's what I was going to say. So what I might want to do is, it's so funny that you should say that, is that when I look at that, I would keep $10,000 of that loan outstanding just in case. You could say, I'll keep my 0% loan for another however long, many months, and keep the money in cash. And then, as of August, I'll just take 20,000 or so and, and I'll pay it down and, whatever, to 18,000, pay that down. And then I'll keep the rest and see how it goes. But, I am worried a little bit that like there's just a lot of debt outstanding. So the 30 grand is really about where do we deploy the 30 grand so that we can reduce your debt load. It seems to me that the student loan, highest debt, the $40,000 at 2.75%, the auto loan. The other idea is, and this is like kind of just figuring your emotional ability to handle this. Some people just would rather pay that $4,000 loan at 1.8%, just get rid of it so you don't have to look at it anymore, which is fine with me. That we're not talking about the hugest differentials. Just obviously the math is you pay off your highest interest debt. But if it just will feel good to get rid of that $4,000, I might say, okay, well, pay that $4,000 down, let the rest sit get a high yield cash account. And then when you're ready to pull the trigger on the student loan debt, get rid of 18,000 of it by that time. And you're kind of good. You have a little bit of a heavier emergency reserve fund just in case. And if things are going great, your wife's work is great, your work is great, you're all on track, you're building up more money. And, we look at the situation maybe in September after you've paid some debt down, you might say, hey, Jill, I still have, 50 grand now in my emergency reserve fund. Sure. Then you can pay off more of the auto loan and really get yourself out of debt. But your job right now, you're making a lot of money. You're putting money into your retirement account. It's all great. It all looks good. I really think it's important for you to clean this debt up as quickly as possible. I'm going to say one other thing. In your retirement account, do you have a Roth option on that or not?
Yes, we do.
And I see that while you're going back and forth about the Roth versus not being in the Roth, do you think your wife could start making a lot more money in the future?
There's certainly a possibility. I'm hoping for it.
I mean, there's a little bit of me that thinks that you guys should actually use the Roth. You're solidly in the 24% tax bracket. The 24% is not it's not a terrible tax bracket, and you don't have any state income tax in the state of Texas. But, if all of a sudden maybe she starts making more money and you're popping up into the 32% tax bracket, which is let's say about more than 330,000 total, that maybe that would be different. It's worth watching to see what happens. I don't think it's a slam dunk either way. I might just kind of keep an eye on that and see whether it still makes sense or not. But I think that for now you're fine. And you have insurance and estate planning, wills, because you have these little kids, everything done?
Pretty well covered on insurance. We both have, pretty good short-term and long-term policies, over $1 million, each of us life insurance, but like zero estate planning. So.
Did you now know that you're going to get whacked on this?
I figured wise Aunt Jill might. Yeah.
I don't know what you're thinking. Why did you get a JD and master's and then call me with that little admission? Is that because I really won't beat you up too much? But here's the thing. You have to know lawyers from your law school class who went into trust and estate. You just have to.
Correct.
And so I'm begging you. I'm down on a knee begging you to just do this. It's a very easy transaction. It's a sweetheart will. I leave everything to you. You leave everything to me. Here's who's taking care of our kids if we both die together. That's what you're doing. You got to get that done. Okay, if you want to be like Tim, you want to have 2 segments devoted to you and your question, just send us your emails. Ask Jill at jillonmoney.com. Okay, we'll be right back. You're back. It's Jill on Money, and we are trying to continually, every single week, take the mystery out of your financial life. And it's gosh, you know what? It's tough because I think a lot of people try to quantify all of their financial problems or questions and all of this stuff, which is, it's great, except that you forget that we are emotional beings. In fact, I wrote a whole book about that. And frankly, the reality of where you go with your money and your financial decisions, so much of it is about your emotions. We forget that. So if you want more about that, you can just go buy my book. Go onto the website, JillOnMoney.com. The book is called The Dumb Things Smart People Do With Their Money, 13 Ways to Right Your Financial Wrongs. Okay. Let's do a couple of questions before, or at least a question before we head to the break. We got a great guest next hour, so stay tuned. Marilyn says that she's got 6 months of an emergency reserve fund sitting in a savings account at a big bank. Surely there's got to be a better place for this money. Well, okay, couple things. I agree. There's definitely a better place. There is something to be said, though. You got to make sure that whatever you're leaving in your bank is qualifying you for whatever rate you get or bonuses you get or a way to avoid fees. That's number one. To get the best rates, you guys have heard me talk about this before, depositaccounts.com. I'm going on here right now. I'm going to see, what does it say here? Let's look at savings accounts. Okay. And savings accounts, I mean, I don't know. You could get more, but looks to me like somewhere about 0.5% you can get for maybe a little more, but mostly about 0.5%. The other thing you could try is to take the approach of laddering a CD. You could say, all right, I'll take a little bit of my money and put it in a 1-year CD, some in an 18-month. I don't know. It's a lot of work, but it could be worth it. The high yield savings accounts I find to be the ones that are probably the most appealing. Liquid, easy, no sweat. All right. I hope that helps. All right. It's Jill on Money. When we return, I got a good guest. Second hour guest is a keeper, a good one. All right. We'll be right back.
It's the weekend, and that can only mean one thing. You're listening to Jill on Money, the show that takes the mystery out of your finances. Here's your host, Jill Schlesinger.
You're back. It's hour number 2 of the Jill on Money show, and we are so happy that you're with us. This hour, we are happy to bring back a guest that has been on the program previously. His name is Cal Newport. He's a pretty smart dude. I mean, he is a computer science professor at Georgetown University. He's also written a bunch of books, including 2 of the books that I really love, which are Digital Minimalism and Deep Work. He writes for the New Yorker. He does a million things. Most importantly, he has a new book out, and it is called A World Without Email: Reimagining Work in an Age of Communication Overload. Boy, can we use this. For those of you working from home during this pandemic, it has been a bear. I know. That said, how can we actually get through this overload? How can we better manage it? Well, we're going to tell you. It's going to be a fun hour here. This is our interview with Cal Newport. I want to jump into your new book, which, I'm a huge fan of yours. I loved Deep Work. I loved Digital Minimalism. And every time I talk to you, it spurs me to do something different, but then I slide back into my old habits. So this is great timing. The new book is called A World Without Email: Reimagining Work in an Age of Communication Overload. And you start the book with a story about Dark Tuesday in the administration of President Barack Obama. Can you tell us a little bit about that story and why you started the book with that?
Well, it was a task force that the Obama administration had pulled together, and it was under, I believe, maybe it was the Department of Commerce. And so this group gathers together in Washington, D.C., and I profile Nisha Shara, who was running this group. He came down to run this group, and a computer virus hits them almost immediately. The Department of Homeland Security comes in and says, all right, everyone, we need to take your computers because I guess it's a security threat or something like this. Oh, and by the way, because of government secrecy rules, you can't use your own computers. So no using private email accounts, no using your private laptops. You basically just can't have access to government email until we fix this problem. And it took them 6 weeks. So it was this interesting natural experiment where it was a typical high-powered DC government style, on my BlackBerry and smartphone, all hours of the day, Veep style hypercommunicative situation where this natural experiment where they said, now we're going to take your email away for 6 weeks unexpectedly. And what was interesting about this story is that although there were things that were a huge pain, for example, coordinating with the White House because they weren't on the email threads about what was going on and when the meetings were, they actually got a lot more of the important work done because Nish had to start traveling to the offices of the people they were going to be working with. And he had nothing else to do. So he would just sit there with them for hours and really learn, hey, what's going on? What do you need? Why have things failed in the past? And during those 6 weeks, because of all this extra white space, he called it, they came up with the big ideas that task force ran with for the years that followed.
And there was no lamenting of like, oh gosh, I missed the 400 extra emails every few days that were like nudging me. I think this is instructive because obviously it's a different time because this happened, more than a decade ago. But if this were to happen right now amid COVID, you wouldn't be able to go into someone's office. So let's say that exact scenario were to occur at Georgetown where you teach and you no longer have email and you're not in your office. Tell me what would replace the email template and the way of communication in a world where many people are working from home, because I think a lot of people will continue working from home. What would happen?
Well, to me, the deeper question is not what tools you use, but what are the processes by which you collaborate and get things done. So the one process that most of us just deploy by default is what I call the hyperactive hive mind, which is let's just rock and roll messages back and forth, Slack and email. We'll figure things out on the fly. So the key is replacing that with other ways of coordinating that does not require a lot of unstructured back and forth messaging. Now, the tools you use to do this are somewhat non-consequential. So, if you're on the phone or in a Zoom meeting, or you just have a system set up with shared drives, like I'll put this document here by this time, you pick it up, I'll put my edits in the next day, whatever tools you're actually using. The thing that gets us towards a world without email is saying back and forth, unstructured, unscheduled messaging is not the best way in most cases to actually coordinate. So we have to replace that with a specific alternative. And the tools can shift. And in some sense, it's almost not so important what the tools are.
Essentially, what you're saying is that this form of communication called email, which, I get it, as you say, low friction communication at scale, like throws the stuff out there, but we spend more time managing our work than doing our work. How much time are we spending managing this monster called email?
The data set I like the best shows that we're checking our inboxes once every 6 minutes, which I think is just absurd. And then the other data point I want to put out there, and this is like, it's like a Kafka play, and we just aren't realizing this, is just the reality that for more and more people, they now spend their entire workday in meetings and doing email, forcing them to do their actual work in these hidden second shifts, like early in the morning or in the evening. And we just sort of shrug our shoulders like, yeah, it's a fast-paced world. It's not a fast-paced world. That's absurd. The inmates are running the asylum. We've spiraled out of control. The overhead of talking about work has gotten to the place where we can't actually do any work anymore during the workday. I think there's a huge problem. And we were much too quick just to look around and say, like, I guess this is just what work is in a high-tech age. And I really disagree with that. I think we're in the early stages of figuring out how to do work in a digital world. And what we're doing now is going to embarrass us 10 years from now when we look back.
Part of this is like this strange way that our brains have adapted to this world. Okay, I owned a dog 20 years ago. I would walk my dogs. I had a BlackBerry, but I never checked it while I was walking the dogs. I might listen to, at the time, which was some sort of like, I don't know, like an iPod. And now I walk my dogs and I am compulsively checking my email while I walk my dogs. Why do I do that? What is going on in my brain that's making me do that?
Well, one of the key points here is that I think we're too quick the place to blame on the individual. We check it too much. We shouldn't. We should have better inbox habits. We should batch our inbox checks. But part of what I document is that it's actually a rational behavior because our organizations as a whole have increasingly embraced this hyperactive hive mind workflow, I call it, as the main way that everything gets done.
Mm.
So the main way that everything gets done now in the modern knowledge work setting is back and forth, ad hoc, unstructured, unscheduled messaging. And if that's the way that everything gets done, that means that any one day there might be a dozen different asynchronous back and forth conversations going on that you're a part of and you have to tend. That means you have to monitor this inbox essentially constantly because you need to see when one of those messages come in, you have to ping it back for that process, whatever's being discussed there to keep moving forward. And so what I really argue is this hyperactive hive mind forces us to have to look at the inbox all the time, which is why any attempt to say, well, just have better habits as an individual, just, check it less, have email-free Fridays, that's going to fail. We have to actually replace the underlying processes that are generating all those messages in the first place.
We'll get back to our interview with Cal Newport in just a moment. If you've got a financial question, maybe it's a career question. We're talking a lot about careers lately. I think it's starting to get in people's heads that they may want to change the way they work and who they work for. If you've got a question, send us an email. Ask Jill at jillonmoney.com. We'll be right back.
.401ks, IRAs, refinancing, she covers it all. Back to Jill on Money with Jill Schlesinger.
You're back. It's Jill on Money. This is the program that takes the mystery out of your financial life. All right, we attempt to do that. I can't say we're going to do that. We're trying. We're doing our best. We is me and the best executive producer in the whole world, Mark Talercio. We are both certified financial planners. We don't really use those designations in any commercial way, but I don't know. We like them. We like having it. I did it a long time ago, Mark more recently, but it gives us a more holistic approach to how we talk about financial matters. And it also means that we're a little bit partial to the sponsor for this program, Facet Wealth. Facet Wealth does financial planning for pretty much anyone. And that financial planning comes from certified financial planners who are fiduciaries. They've got to put your best interest first. Facet charges flat fees. Kind of interesting. I think that's the cool, one of the cooler aspects of what they do. And of course, because they're all certified financial planners who are giving that advice, they are looking at goal-based planning, not transactions. There are no wealth or account minimums. So if you want to check it out, go to facetwealth.com. Facetwealth.com. Okay. We are talking to our good old pal, Cal Newport, who has written a book called A World Without Email. It goes without saying that we are spending way too much time answering emails instead of doing our work. I know you know that. But what's fascinating are some of the actual numbers behind how much time we spend, how often we check our emails. I am the worst violator of all of this. I do it too much. Mark knows that. And so I'm just outing myself as a perpetual slave to her email. Anyway, to help me out and to help you out, here is the next part of our interview with Cal Newport. I will just tell you from the CBS News part of this, there's just like way too many emails that go out. Like I'm on 1,000 lists. And even if you are checking obsessively, it's easy to miss it when there's so much crap coming through. Like I don't really need to see our correspondent in Italy tell me that she's filing something about vaccines right now. You know what I mean? So it's like we've done a terrible job of managing the tool that we have, and it is the expectation that you have to constantly monitor it. So tell me how that could change in an organization that is already fully entrenched in that mode.
You have to get below the inbox, right? We can't solve this problem in the inbox itself. We can't solve the problem with norms. We can't solve the problem with expectations about response time. We can't solve it with better personal productivity. We have to go down and be specific about here are the actual processes that execute in our organization. These are often implicit. We don't name them, but they're there. There's the filing the story process. There's the finding out about breaking news process. There's the, getting the paperwork that the HR department needs process. They're there. And we implement most of these right now with just rock and rolling in inboxes because it's easy and it's flexible and it's convenient. And we also have this autonomy trap, which is a whole other issue. If we're going to solve the problem, though, we have to actually take these underlying processes and say, wait, what's the best way? How do we actually want to, for example, file stories? And then you can say, is there a way to do this, a set of rules we can agree on, a process, whatever procedure that doesn't require 7 or 8 back and forth asynchronous messages? And then you repeat process after process. And what happens is you take a lot of this asynchronous, ad hoc, demanding back and forth interaction, it comes out of your inbox and it gets consolidated into set times when it's discussed or set systems that don't require discussion. And the pressure really reduces and your inbox begins to transform. The companies that have done this, it transforms from this hive mind at the center of everything to a very convenient form of the mailboxes we used to have in a pre-email day. Oh, I'll check this once a day because it was a nice way for you to send me that report instead of having to put it into a memo folder. And that makes all the difference.
One of the other stats that really did blow my mind, the longest interval that each user worked with no inbox checks or instant messaging. So by the way, all these people like, oh, we have instant message, it's Slack, it's no better. It's the same crap. Okay, that was just me, sorry. Okay, for half of the users studied, the longest uninterrupted interval was no more than 40 minutes. The most common length, checking in, 20 minutes. More than 2/3 of the users never experience an hour or more of uninterrupted time during the period studied. That really makes it difficult to do any sort of thoughtful work. Here I am, I'm on the air with you and I'm conducting this interview. And I have my back to my screen because I don't want to see any email messages coming in. I've turned my phone to do not disturb. I'm super focused. But, when I'm sitting by myself and I'm trying to write an article that's on deadline, it's harder for me to do that. So that uninterrupted time, which you think you could manage yourself, you're saying it has to organizationally happen. I can't do it myself.
It is crucial. I mean, we'll just establish that. I went deep on this topic of why checking these inboxes all the time kills us. And it is just terrible for our brains. Our brains can't do it. We cannot do these quick checks of inboxes and then come back and try to actually think productively. Because when we see that inbox and we see 100 messages and 99 of them we can't answer right now, and they're from other people and people in our tribe and people we care about, you have all of this context switching that starts happening in your brain. And then when you wrench it away from that, leaving all of those things unresolved and try to return to the article you're writing or the decision you're trying to make or the conversation you're trying to have, a big part of your brain is still stuck on trying to what it was looking at before. And it's why we feel exhausted and it's why we feel miserable and why we feel anxious and feel like we have a hard time getting work done. We simply can't work that way. It's basically like a torture chamber we've created. We've made it basically impossible to actually do our work and then say, okay, now try to do that work. Like work in an environment where our brain really can't do the work. And I don't know why we've settled with it. But to get to your original question, there are things you can do as an individual, but yeah, ultimately, this is not a problem of inbox habits. It's a problem of processes. And ultimately, these processes, this is a team or organization-wide conversation that has to be had. Here is how we do X. Here's how we do Y. Here's how we do Z. And those answers need to acknowledge that our human brain can't check an inbox every 6 minutes. And so we have to find a way to collaborate that doesn't require this constant back and forth, ad hoc, unstructured digital messaging. We used to do it until about 20 years ago. We can do it again. It's hard, but work is hard. It's kind of by the definition. It's like nothing about work is easy, but we're all going to be better off if we can do that.
I remember when we talked about digital minimalism, you explained the myth around multitasking. So can you just do a refresher? Because, you just touched on it, but why is it that our brains can't really do this? What's happening?
The term is network switching, and network switching is expensive. So our brain is relatively sequential. It assumes we're going to be doing one thing at a time. And then when we're done with something, we're going to turn our attention to the new thing. And it takes some time to switch your attention from one context to another. Certain neural networks have to be amplified. Certain neural networks have to be inhibited. It's kind of a complex process. I get into it in this book. It's sort of interesting, actually, the history of neuroscience. They began working on this in the 1920s when they had no idea what was happening in the brain, but they would do these experiments where they would have you do tasks and they would time how long it took for you to do the task, like adding 7 to every number in a sequence. Then they would have people interleave 2 tasks. Like, okay, interleave adding 7 to every number and doing the alphabet backwards or something like this. And they would measure with clocks very carefully. Wow, their people are much slower when they have to keep switching back and forth between two different tasks. So they used to do this with clocks, and then we got MRI scanners and modern neuroscience, and they have it down to the actual neural networks. But network switching is expensive. If you try to shift really quickly, let me look at my email contacts, back to my work contacts, back to my email contacts, back to my work contacts, look at my phone, look at social media, same idea in this context. You're switching your network back and forth much faster than it can actually keep up. And it creates an effect in your brain where you're basically foggy. You get frustrated, you get low energy. I think we all have that feeling of we keep checking our inbox while we're trying to do something important, and our energy to work saps, and then eventually just give up, like, let me just check my email. Our brain can't handle that, right? We are not meant to do that. We were not evolved to do that. So I don't care about multitasking. What I care about is these quick checks. That's what kills you. Even if you only have Microsoft Word open on your screen, you don't have notifications, you don't have your inbox open at the same time. If you're still checking that inbox every 6 minutes, even if you're just glancing to see if a message comes back that you're waiting to see, you're devastating your productivity.
We'll get back to our interview with Cal Newport in just a minute. Hey, here's something to do. During the break, go to his website, calnewport.com. calnewport.com. You can check out all of his books. They're kind of cool. I think that my favorite one, Mark, was Deep Work. That totally blew my mind and changed the way I thought about my own work. All right. It's Jill on Money. We'll be right back.
Welcome back to Jill on Money, where Jill Schlesinger takes the mystery out of your finances.
You're back. It's Jill on Money, and we are continuing our conversation with Cal Newport. We've already identified the problem. We just get too many emails. This part of our interview, we're talking about the tools you need to combat that problem.
In the near future, what you can actually do, and here's what I've observed, you can start to do this process optimization asymmetrically. That is, just focusing on what you control as an individual without announcing what you're doing, without asking for permission, without annoying people with autoresponders. You can just start optimizing what you can in these processes and see a massive improvement in the pull of your inbox on your mind. So like this might mean, for example, here's like a report I collaborate with some people to produce every week. Like right now, we kind of just rock and roll an email. You might send them a message and say, okay, yeah, here's what we're going to do. Here's what I'm thinking. Like I will have a draft of this report in our Dropbox by noon on Monday. Put any comments, just label them right there on the PDF, right? I'll pick it up Tuesday morning to take a look at it. I have this office hours Tuesday afternoon where I'm just always on Zoom and available by phone. So if there's like a problem we really have to discuss, just grab me then and we can really get into it. And then my plan will be COB Tuesday. I'm going to place it in the folder where the production team grabs it, right? You've really created a process here that has avoided back and forth emails. And remember, every back and forth email you have to send is going to generate a dozen checks. That's why the change you made was so consequential, because your producer might say, yeah, it's simple. Why not just send it to you by email? But no, if you're going to send this by email, that means I have to check my inbox 100 times a week to see if that email came in. So it's disastrous, even if in the moment it seems simpler. So now you've just created a process in this example. You're not telling people it's a process. You're not telling them about Cal Newport. They're just like, great, I'm glad, Jill's on it. Sounds like a good plan. I'm going to move on. Or you look at, I schedule a lot of meetings. There's a lot of back and forth emails to schedule these meetings, which means it generates hundreds and hundreds of checks to wait for these messages. Maybe I'll use Schedule Once or Calendly, like one of these tools that allows single message booking. Like, yeah, here's all my times, grab whatever's convenient for you. You do this process by process. What can I do that I control that's going to reduce? And again, the metric here is so critical, the amount of back and forth messaging required for this process to actually complete. Just doing this on your own can significantly improve the amount of time you have to keep coming back and checking this inbox.
Okay, Mark wants this question answered, and I think that he is in a place where we get thousands and thousands of emails. I mean, so many, because we're asking people to send us questions and we answer them on the air. He feels this overwhelming guilt that he doesn't get back to everybody. What we do is on the show, we'll say, hey, we can't get back to everybody. We have an autoresponder on, which is basically like, thank you so much for your email. Blah, blah. But how can he manage his guilt? You now have to be Mark's shrink.
Well, I've been through this myself. I had to do this with the questions I used to get for my website. And now that I run a podcast in which I answer questions, you can imagine that a lot come in. My consolation to Mark is that expectations trump accessibility. This seems to be a really ironclad rule in the world of professional communication, that if, a listener is coming to your website and it says, here's how you submit your questions, we look at them all, we appreciate it, we can't actually answer them, they're not unhappy because the expectation is clear. Oh, I don't expect a response. Great. So I'm sending my question. I don't expect a response. I'm happy. Accessibility is only something that people demand, like let's say in like a client relationship, if they don't otherwise know what's going on. Like people complain a lot. Well, I have a client that bothers me all the time over email. They would never put up with a process that reduced how easily they could reach us. But time and again, I document examples where that's not the case, because the reason the client is bothering you all the time is that they just don't trust that you're organized or getting things done, and it's on the top of their mind and they want to just shoot it over to you so they don't have to think about it. But if there was something more structured, and here's an actual example from the book, like a once a week call, we write down everything we committed to doing and we send it to you after the call. You do something like that and suddenly the client's like, great, I don't have to worry about this. I don't have to bother you. It's an ironclad rule. Expectations trump accessibility. Your listeners are not unhappy that Mark isn't answering. If it is clear that this is how it works, you submit your questions this way, we appreciate them, thank you, we're not able to answer the messages, they're okay with that. And I think the more general rule here is having these clear expectations, especially when you're looking outside of your organization to people, incoming clients, listeners, etc. Clear expectations about how communication happens. That is way more important than exactly how much communication is actually available to them.
What are some of the tools that you see out there that are really helping some organizations? And also thinking about, like, just let's say that you're self-employed, you got either a side hustle or you've got, a gig of some sort, but it's more than like I'm an Uber driver, but it's something else like that. What are some of the tools out there that you think that you've seen that can really enhance productivity?
Like one thing I've seen a lot of is the use of project management type tools in which you can have all of the tasks and information related to a particular process or project in one place where everyone shares it and everyone can see it and everyone can see the status, who's working on what, where is it, where all the information is. So getting that out of inboxes and moving it to a place where it's all visible. So this can be done with Trello. This can be done with Asana. This can be done with Flow. This can be done with Basecamp. I mean, there's any number of tools that have this functionality baked in, but it's not so much the specific tool as much as the process here. So to give an example of this in action, I talk about a marketing firm in the book, small marketing firm, like dozen employees. They were completely overwhelmed with email. Like everything was just going back. You have one inbox, it's your name at company.com, completely overwhelmed. They switch over to Trello and they say, we're going to have one Trello board for every client. And then that Trello board has all the information for that client. Like, here's the things that we're working on. Here's the things that are going to happen in phase 2. Here's all the notes from all the calls we've had with that client. They're all attached to these virtual cards. And they're over here in this column. Every card that's being worked on right now, every task, it's labeled, like, Devish, who ran this company, he's working on this. Cal's working on that. Everything was right there. And he said it completely changed the way they worked, where before you would just open your inbox and you were seeing messages from all your different clients and trying to deal with everything at the same time. Now they became much more sequential. Okay, I'm working on this client. Let me load up that client's board. And that's all I'm seeing right now. That client, just information about that client. And I can just work on that client until I've made progress on something and I've updated that board. And then I ask, okay, what's next? And like that little change, Devisha was almost like tears to his eyes if you hear him, when I interviewed him for the book. He's like, it just completely changed my life. I was actually working on things and not just trying to keep up with the chatter. So definitely those boards play a big role in a lot of these companies.
We'll get back to our interview with Cal Newport in just a minute. We have some really cool things to consider, by the way. If during the break you've got a financial question, just send us an email. Ask Jill at jillonmoney.com. We'll be right back.
Follow Jill on Twitter and Instagram for more personal finance content. Just use the handle @JillOnMoney. Now, back to the show.
You're back. It's Jill on Money, and we are broadcasting from the Capital One Bank virtual studios. Capital One, this is banking reimagined. What's in your wallet? Hey, and if you'd like to experience the virtual studio yourself, I've got a great idea. When you send us your financial question, when you send us that email to askjill@jillonmoney.com, all you need to do is say, hey, I'd like to join you in that virtual studio. I want to check out the Capital One Bank virtual studios, and I want to hear Mark's voice. If that's the case, just make sure that you say you'd come on the air with us, and Mark will do the rest. He's so good. He knows how to do all that stuff. So smart. So let us know if we can get you on the program with us. Okay. We're going to get back to our interview with Cal Newport in just a minute. Here's the problem. We have all these emails. They're coming in. But as so many of you know, if your organization runs on email, which, as I've already noted, CBS does, if that's the case, there's not a lot you can do necessarily. Or is there? See how I turned that around, Mark? Or is there? I think that this was sort of an interesting aspect in Cal's book, A World Without Email. He acknowledges that this is a systemic problem among employers. But is there something we can do as individuals to help our employers get off the crack cocaine that is email? Is there some system that we can bring to our bosses that makes sense? Okay, here is the conclusion of our interview with author and professor Cal Newport. I kind of love the idea of doing what you can do, and maybe even saying, like, if you test it out, you could even bring it to a boss and say, like, hey, I've been doing this for the last 3 months. It's been awesome. Maybe you want to try it with other people, with other correspondents and their producers. I just like the idea of a way not to be tethered to this thing called the inbox.
And the message to accompany that, if you're talking to a boss or talking to your team, is to underscore the need to constantly check these inboxes, which is what happens if you are coordinating using back and forth messaging, is a productivity gut punch. It is terrible for the company. It makes us worse at what we're doing. It takes more time. It's making us miserable. I keep coming back to that. I mean, working with the hyperactive hive mind, I think, is cognitively equivalent to having someone come around every hour or so and give you a shot of whiskey to take. It's having a similar impact on your ability to think clearly and get things done. That's key, because a lot of old think on this is, oh, this is productive. And so people are complaining because they just find it inconvenient. So there's this old boss think of like, work is hard and you don't like that it's hard, but this is actually way more productive to email all the time. I'm really trying to flip the script. That's why I wrote, I think it's like the definitive section on the impact of this on your brain. I talked to the scientist. I went back and traced all the data because I wanted right up front in my book something you could show to a boss that makes it clear, no, this isn't about, I don't like being distracted, stop bothering me. This is about, this has to be one of the worst possible ways you could organize a bunch of people to actually produce value with their brain. We will produce more, better stories, better pieces, more stories, more pieces, more retention. Everything will get better if we move past this. The only cost we have to pay is, it's a pain to figure out how are we going to use this Trello board to organize our Sunday stories. We have these set real-time conversations, set times on the calendar. We have a Trello board. That's more of a pain than just rock and rolling an email, but the story is going to be better. So we just have to get over that pain of, these processes are annoying to set up. It's not as flexible. It's not as convenient. But the entire history of the intersection of commerce and technology says that the best ways to produce things are never the easiest ways to do it. I mean, that's the entire history. Yeah. It's hard.
Right. And the idea here is that the upfront time that you spend doing it is going to bear so much more fruit over the longer term. Cal, what have you learned during lockdown and working from home has surprised you about yourself?
Well, I went deep on remote work during lockdowns in the pandemic. I went deep on this topic because I did a big article for the New Yorker on this to try to understand, well, what's the impact of all this remote work? And the thing I came away from that surprised me, but I think is important, is when you go fully remote, especially when you do this suddenly, it exasperates all of these issues of the hyperactive hive mind. So companies and teams that were kind of barely holding it together in real offices with all this back and forth messaging or this or that are spiraling out of control once everyone is remote. So I have this optimistic gloss, that maybe this will raise the pain of the hyperactive hive mind past that tolerance threshold enough that it finally pushes a lot of companies to say, okay, we probably need to actually take the time to figure out in advance better ways of organizing. Because, hey, the areas of the knowledge sector that already really structure how they organize their work, like software development, where they use Scrum and Agile methodologies, where there's task boards and Scrum masters and weekly stand-up meetings, and everyone knows what they're working on and why, and they figure that all out. They had no problem going remote. They have no
Yeah.
problem. They have just huge software teams that have been running remote for years. Everyone else, it's been chaotic, because if you take the hive mind and you turn it up 20% by making everyone remote, it starts to get basically unbearable.
Cal Newport, the book is called A World Without Email, Reimagining Work in an Age of Communication Overload. I can't thank you enough for joining us. You've been very generous with your time, and I wish you continued success and, most importantly, good health.
Well, thanks. And if any of your listeners have any questions about any of this, email Mark and he'll get right back to you.
If you'd like more information about Cal Newport, Mark will put a link to his website in our show notes. Our show notes are put up every weekend. Just go to the JillOnMoney.com website and click on the listen link, and there you will find everything you need to know. JillOnMoney.com, that's the website, and Jill on Money, that's the name of the show. We'll be right back. You're back. It's Jill on Money. And before we finish up the program, we'd like to get to one last question from Sean, who writes, I am 49 years old, married, 2 kids, 2 401ks, 2 529s, and 1 Roth. Sort of sounds like a partridge in a pear tree kind of list there. Together, we make around $150,000 a year. Here is my question. I contributed to my Roth for 2021 at the beginning of the year. Shortly after that, we decided to sell a rental property. The profits from the sale will put us over the Roth income limits for the year. What are my options? Okay, your first thing is you're going to absolutely recharacterize this. So you're going to take the money out, and I don't know where you have these where the Roth is, but Mark, do you have to officially tell the holding group that you're pulling out and recharacterizing, or can you just pull it out and move on? Okay, so Mark thinks if you go through the firm wherever this Roth is held, they may need you to complete a form. The question is, can I roll it into 2022 instead? Well, no, just put the money in a traditional IRA. How about that? Or keep it in cash or put it in your 529 and move on. She can't put money into a Roth either if your income is over. If you're talking about, the rest of his question is, should I make the contribution for 2020 for my wife? That's a possibility if you haven't filed your taxes yet. To say, okay, well, I'm making this 2020 contribution. It's in my wife's Roth IRA. I kind of like that idea. Just be careful whenever you're making a recharacterization, whenever you're moving money that's from, let's say, an old retirement plan into an IRA or a Roth IRA, you just got to be careful that they don't commingle funds, that everyone knows what you're talking about. So that's the most important. Be very clear, because we don't want monies that are not clearly defined. Okay. All right, that's it. It's been a great show, and we thank you so much for joining us. If you have any questions at all you need to do is send us an email, askjill@jillonmoney.com. And if you're on the website, just click on the contact button at the jillonmoney.com website. Our music is composed by Joel Goodman. Mark Talercio is our executive producer, my partner in crime. And we like to close the show, and we're going to keep doing this till we don't have to anymore. Wash your hands, wear your masks, maintain your physical distancing, and try to do something nice for someone else today. It will make you feel better. I promise. It will make them feel better. Okay, thank you so much for listening, and we'll talk to you next week.